should be able to see it too. Okay, so the idea is we are going to review the material for test 3. It's kind of been strung out a little bit, and we have a little bit of it that came before test 2 because we decided to push digestion off. So at any point, if you've got questions or things that you want to talk about, something you like, I don't remember. I know Brittany's already asked. She's like, there's a lot of stuff on a lot of the slides. How can we narrow those things down? Okay. So I tried to do that here as we were going through it. We'll try to redo that here. Okay, so it'll also be recorded. Okay, so digestion. Pretty much, I think everybody feels good with what a digestive system is. We know it's got a beginning and an end. And the whole purpose is to break down the chemical into chemical parts. So I'm not going to be able to go through everything. You don't want to forget, even though test 2 had the cellular respiration and photosynthesis on it, you don't want to forget those things because come for the final exam, those are great ways to make sure that tests 1, 2, and 3 are kind of all come together. So solar energy comes in through photosynthesis. We eat plants, and there's where the ingestion and the digestion take place. We eat plants because plants built up their body mass. So plants are made out of thin air, right? So that's where they get their carbon. Where do we get our carbon? We get it from the plant. Okay, what do we do with that carbon? So maybe the best way to do this would be photosynthesis gives sugar, glucose, something like that. The plant takes this and uses it to build itself, not just from energy. We're not talking about energy right now, even though when you break this apart, you release energy, right? We take this set of carbons and it's used completely throughout to build the biomass of the plant. And so our plant goes it gets bigger the more it does this. Okay, so how does a plant get bigger? It takes in carbon dioxide. That's where those carbons come from. Now, what do? We come along see, that's us. And we are going to eat, right? So for example, if there's an apple that plant made, and in fact, apples are sweet, right? Apples are, they're made of glucose. Well, larger chains of carbohydrates. We'll break them down with glucose. We eat it. We get bigger, right? How do we get bigger? Our carbons that all of our macromolecules are made from come from the things that we eat. So that came from the plant that we ate that grew because it did photosynthesis. We following this, okay? Okay. So let's take a step right here and let's talk about digestion as it works its way through. So let's eat the apple. Let's fix that cat. Okay. So we eat the apple. Where does it go? In your mouth. So we've got mouth, and what happens there? There are two major things. So there's mechanical, and chemical, and what's the word that goes into that? Do you remember? It's digestion. Yes, the breakdown. Okay, so digestion. If for some reason y'all see that I think the whole board is on the screen, basically, isn't it? I'll go past that one. So what is mechanical digestion? It's chewing. And what's the purpose of mechanical digestion? We chew it so that we do what? One, so we can swallow it. Okay, there's two things that actually happen. One is so we can swallow and not choke ourselves. And two, what's the second part of that mechanical digestion? It actually goes into the chemical aspect. It is for breakdown, but how do we get to chemical breakdown from mechanical breakdown? Before peristalsis. We have to break it down first. So chewing does what? The more we chew, the more it increases surface area. Okay. And the reason for this is that surface area is going to become, we're going to increase it so that the digestion from our saliva, okay, our digestive enzymes or chemical digestion, can have more to a touch, and therefore it can do more chemical digestion. Yeah, it's not energy.
I mean, mechanical digestion.
Yeah.
Increases surface.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the example I like to use for this, if I give you a piece of ice, and I give you a piece of ice that was the same size, but then I crunched it with a hammer, which one's going to melt first? Which one do you think? You have two pieces of ice, same size. The crunched up one. And why? Why does the one that's crunched up melt faster?
Yeah. It's smaller.
It has the same amount of ice. And so why do the smaller pieces melt faster? Because they're actually it's more. Because when you crunch it up, you actually have more surface area, aren't you? If you think about it, like the surface of the ice is a certain amount. You can measure it easily. But if I crunch it up, there is more exposed ice. Exposed to what? Exposed to heat and air. And so because that interaction, whereas if you have the piece of ice that you don't crunch up, the inside ice doesn't get exposed to that heat and air the same. So it stays solid for longer. If you don't chew your food, it will stay solid for longer. Okay, and chewing it up will actually give more surface for it to become wet with saliva and digestion enzymes to start working. And so we begin chemical digestion in the mouth. Now, what gets chemically digested in the mouth? There's one kind of macromolecule, carbs. Okay, so we're going to start chemical digestion of carbs. I told you my pizza story, right? About the pizza and chocolate. Yep, y'all heard the story, so I'm not going to redo it. Now, we swallow, and Brittany, what was our answer for this? Peristalsis. Okay, I don't know how to say it correctly either myself. I have no idea. So we swallow. What is peristalsis? It's that wave-like movement that you can feel that pushing food down. And y'all did the assignment on vomiting, by the way. I graded that. Y'all talked about it works the other direction. Okay, so peristalsis sends us where? Into the esophagus. Of course, we'll continue peristalsis to go where? Stomach. So we don't really do anything with the esophagus. All it does is basically is a movement. It's a tube to move from one space to the next. What happens at the stomach? Well, before we move there, we have to do something. So we have a number of things. We have more chemical digestion. So we have acids. But if you remember, is it really the acid that does breakdown? based on our experiment, the acid does probably more about killing things or probably denaturing proteins, which would have an aspect here. But really, what's doing the digestion here? What's another enzyme, right? By the way, they're all over there. So carbohydrates are broken down by amylases. What's being broken down?
With
Not lipases. Those are for lipids. But lipids don't break down
protein.
proteins. And so we break it down with proteases. I would say yes. I don't think it would be that hard to remember.
No, I was-
Protein, protease, lipase, lipid. The only weird one is carbohydrates.
Yeah, but it's not- but I guess-
Yeah, it's amylose. Probably because one of the first sugars that they worked on was probably amylose. I guess. Now, let me ask you this. What is digested in the stomach? Carbs and proteins. So we continue carbohydrates. And then what do we do? Go from stomach to where? And what do we do here? Aha. Okay, so let's talk about bile. And yes, we should talk about it first. Because before we talk about any more of the digestive process, we have to handle those acids. How do we handle the acids? Bile does what? Does a number of things. One of the things that bile does is to neutralize the acid. Anybody else remember another major thing that bile does?
Talking about non-digital and how it does that.
Uh-huh. You remember the first letter of it, Luis? It's okay if you don't. I just see it if you did. But you're right. It's about Dawn dish detergent is the example I used. It's something called emulsification. You're like, wow, that's a big word. All it means is what? What does dish detergent do to the grease on your pants? Forms little, like, there's little molecules of the bile that surround the lipids. Why? To break them down into little pieces so that they can be absorbed with water. Because lipids are fats and oils, they don't mix with water, but we have to mix it. We have to be able to do that. And that's going to allow us to be able to do digestion. So what do we digest in the small intestine? We don't digest bile, actually. That's in square.
Non-digest.
Lipids. That all?
All digest.
Everything. Everything gets digested here. Now, lipids start in your small intestines, but we continue to do proteins. And we continue to do carbohydrates and nucleic acids, but we don't want to talk about that. Oops, there's Shelby. Hey, Shelby,
What's up?
how's the cat?
I'm gonna be honest with you, bud, not great.
Oh, I was not hoping for that. I'm sorry.
It has a parasite. But she'll be fine. She's a girl, by the way.
Oh, that's good to know. Is this gonna be like Alien? Is it gonna like burst out the belly?
I hope not. This is my ESA, so if it dies, I don't know where I'm gonna be after that.
Well, to spend time. We're recording all this, so if you can't concentrate, you can come back to it later, okay?
I'm concentrating. I got you, dog.
Okay. So here we go, small intestine. Now, is this all that we do at small intestine? It's just digestion and bile? We also do absorption. Absorb. That's D. Spell it out. Of what? Everything. Okay. Now, how does absorption take place? A little bit weird. I'm just going to pull this down here. Proteins, carbs, they get absorbed into the bloodstream. But that's not the case for lipids. Does anybody remember where they get absorbed? Yeah. So the lymphatic system, and one thing to keep in mind, lymphatic system is all about, well, two things, absorbing water, like excess water around the body. So if there's excess like water building up in certain spots, like from like water swelling, the lymphatic system can absorb that. But along the way, it also absorbs those little bits of lipids that we've broken things down into, like the fatty acids and the glycerols. That makes sense. Okay. And there's also a connection there to the immunity stuff, because you've got lymphocytes, the B cells and the T cells. So there's a connection in the lymphatic system, both with immunity and with digestion. What does the lymphatic system do with what it absorbs? It eventually will take it back and drop it off into the bloodstream. It's just one extra step for some reason. Okay. Now, where does the bloodstream take these things? And finally gets there. Where do these little bits? So all these lipids, proteins, and carbs that we've broken them down into their amino acids and their monosaccharides and their fatty acids and glycerols, where do they go? Do I? So all these parts that we've taken down and we've broken down to their smallest components, we put it in the bloodstream or the lymphatic system, then the bloodstream. Where does it go once it gets into the bloodstream? Think about this. This is your food that you've eaten. You've broken it down, broken it down, broken it down, broken it down. You've absorbed it in your bloodstream. Well, maybe, but that's not the only place. Yeah, but all those things and more. So y'all were thinking about specific aspects of the digestive system, but what was the purpose of actually doing digestion? For your cells. And so that's exactly what the bloodstream does. All of that stuff that you ate and you broke it down to its smallest components, it takes it to the cells of your whole body. For example, specifically capillary beds, like the smallest blood vessels, because those are the ones that have the easiest time releasing exchange of nutrients. And what do we do when those things get to those cells? Exactly. So breakfast is really complicated, isn't it? As well as dinner and lunch and all those different snacks that you have. I eat a lot, so it's complicated. Okay. How do you feel about this? This is kind of an overall process. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to go through some of these slides. I'm going to step back more, I think, and add some stuff maybe to this thing that we haven't added yet. So there are some accessory organs. The liver, where is your bile created? In the liver. Where is the bile stored? Gallbladder. What happens if you don't have a gallbladder and you eat some greasy food? You're straight through here. Yes, it's not fun from right here. I still have my gallbladder finger.
Saw a video on the internet. They actually, he was like on a road trip, ate some greasy food, and he was freaking out. You know, driving really, really fast out on the highway. And his gallbladder.
You have to plan what you eat in those situations. It's very, yeah. It's bad if you find someplace you can pull over.
But that's what like all greasy.
If you don't have a gallbladder, yeah. And it's because when you remove that gallbladder, you lose the ability to kind of control the amount of bile that goes in. So your liver's like, oh, you just had some fried chicken. Let's make some bile. But you have no control over like how it gets input into that small intestine now. So it's not like your digestive system stops working. It's just you've lost one step of control. Then you end up losing a few more steps down the line. Okay. Now what we've done is go through this whole purpose of how do we get to energy? On top of this, it's not just about respiration and energy. It's also about what makes us bigger. So how do we go from here to here? We have the energy to do the process, but also the carbon to make our bodies bigger as well. So both mass and energy get transferred to us through this process. Because once we make all these building blocks, some of them we turn into we break down and release energy to make ATP, but some of it we just use and make ourselves bigger. Okay, does that make sense too? So are you made out of thin air? Really? I would say yeah. Me personally. I mean, is it directly made from thin air? No. But are we indirectly? Well, if the plants were, and we ate the plants, then kind of. I don't think that's the best way to describe it, but if you ask that question, it makes you think a few steps before. Because you could also say that plants are just made out of a bunch of respired people or things like that. Because what happens when you do respiration? What do you release? It's just a carbon cycle. People wonder why you have to know ecology when you go to med school. What do y'all think? It's not the question that we're pretty answer. Do y'all think med students should understand ecology at least a little? Yeah, I think if you don't, then all the stuff that you think about with us, you forget about so many aspects that are related to us, but we ignore a lot of times. Okay, so here we go. Enzymes, what is the connection to enzymes here? What I want you to know about enzymes are chemical digestion. It's just done through enzymes. That's all chemical digestion is. Enzymes are also specific. So what temperature do your enzymes work at? Body temperature, what is body temperature?
37 degrees.
37 degrees Celsius or 98.6-ish degrees Fahrenheit. What pH do most of your enzymes work at? Both. Why both? Because most of our body is neutral at 7, but we're all at this like 2 to 3 in our stomach. Okay. Because why else does it matter if we have bile then? Because bile is also part of that neutralizing the acid. So it matters, doesn't it? Because if you put that acid into your small intestine, the proteins and other enzymes that are involved there won't work the same. So we have to neutralize that, bring it up to 7, so that we can do all that stuff the small intestine wants to do. Okay. What do basically our enzymes do? They take molecules and they break them. What happens to that? When you break a bond, you do what? You release energy. Well, wait a minute. But when we do that with a lot of these foods, we're actually not releasing that energy to make ATP, right? We only do that if we do what? What kind of food do we, what molecule do we have to do for respiration? Glucose. But look over there, for example, we've got sucrose. We break the sucrose into a glucose and fructose. We can do fructose, by the way, too, in respiration. But we don't put sucrose in it. We only put the monomer, not the disaccharide. So where did the energy go from here? What happened there? I don't think we talked about this in class, but I think this would be a good moment to just mention it. So you've broken a bond, you have to have given off energy, you did not transfer that energy, or at least not all of that energy to anything else, didn't make ATP. So where does that excess energy go that you are breaking down as you do respiration? I'm sorry, as you do digestion. How do you maintain a body temperature? Some of it is lost as heat. Okay, that's the type of energy of some of our those bonds and energy are broken out into. Some of it's just lost as heat, and that's body heat for us. Now you see why we're expensive. It requires a lot of food to run us because we're just like giving off energy all the time. Okay. Okay, so this was just a slide that talked about where everything broke down. We kind of already covered that. Y'all okay there? We've covered most of this through the small intestine. Okay, we're good there? Let's move on just a little bit. We talked about teeth. We know the mechanical digestion aspect. We talked about, one thing we didn't talk about was chyme, but that's just what happens to the food in the stomach. It's the mixture of the acids and all that food. So not a big deal. Sometimes called a food ball, but it's just a mixture of that food that's with the digestive enzymes, the acids in the stomach. Okay, do we have control over our stomach moving? Not a lot, but we do have a little. If we decide to eat a lot more food, the stomach will have some things that trigger and say, hey, go ahead and empty out some of that food because more food's coming. So do you fully digest everything in that moment? No. So eating at a buffet, all you can eat, probably is not nutritionally great for you. Also not really financially great for you either in some ways. Yeah, I get to eat a lot of food, but it's just the enjoyment of eating. A lot of that does not become biomass. A lot of it becomes poop. Okay. Are we good there? Okay. Now there was something in the small intestine that's coming up. We've already talked about the gallbladder. There's a little bit about how large meals push things along. We've talked about this. Okay, I want to get to one thing about absorption. So there's something special about the small intestine that deals with absorption. Do y'all remember what that is? And the arrow is pointing into the inside. I have another example up here. So what are these things? Y'all remember? And there's little ones. Villi. Yeah. Two, yeah, two. So villi and microvilli. So each villus is one. Each villus has little microvilli all over it. And what's the purpose of these things? You remember we actually looked at this in our salamander. We cut open that and looked at the little fuzzy look inside. So what's the purpose of the villi and microvilli? Bless you. It's also to increase. Anybody finish my statement? Surface area. In this case, not for breakdown, but for what purpose? So what are we using these for, you think? Absorption. So we are able to absorb more of that stuff that we broke down here in those villi. You'll notice that in each of those villi, especially the microvilli, you've actually got little capillary blood vessels. That's where that absorption into the bloodstream takes place. Okay, are we good there?
They increase surface area.
Small intestine for the purposes of increasing absorption. We cannot run our bodies without that extra. If it was just a nice smooth tube, we would not absorb enough energy to maintain a body like us. We're expensive. Just ask your parents when you were teenagers. Maybe some of y'all are still expensive. How many gallons of milk did y'all go through in a week? About a gallon a week.
Oh, like now?
I was thinking then, but what about now? How many do now?
Um,
You don't drink milk? Oh, well then you're not gonna do this. You're not working for my example.
yeah.
Aussie, do you drink milk? How many gallons of milk did you go through when you were a teenager? Like 3 gallons a week? Yeah. I lived with, yeah, I was that way too. I mean, we didn't necessarily buy them at like 3 at a time, but we were like always going to the store getting it. But I went to, when I went to graduate school, I ended up living with a family from church for a little while, and they had 2 boys, like lower teens and upper teens. And there was always 3 gallons of milk. And that was just for the 2 of them. And then when you add me into the picture, I was like, we went through milk all the time. Yeah. So it's more, I mean, maybe more guy thing, but why is that? Why are we running through so much when we're teenagers? We're still growing. There's a lot of things going on in our body, which requires 2 things, a lot of ATP, but also carbon to make us, grow. And then we slow down, metabolism slows down, we don't need as much, you turn into me. And at this point, I don't need to eat as much as I did. I like to eat as much as I did. And it's starting to become excess weight that I don't need. Okay. Okay, this was about the absorption. I will come back to excess weight in a second, okay? Remember that not only do we break down glucose in digestion, but we also break down fatty acids and glycerols, amino acids. But do those usually give us the same amount of ATP output? If you're not sure, it's on the diagram. So if you look, you'll see if you do fatty acids, you actually come down here. So you're going to make 32 plus 2. You're skipping this amount over here. If you have glycerols, then you do make it. If it's proteins, you don't make this one. If it's carbs, you do make it. So some make more ATP than others, right? Carbs are kind of the main thing that we run our body off of to make ATP, but we can get it from other foods. That's where we brought in the keto diet a little bit. Okay. Now, large intestine. We are past the part that gets us to respiration, and we have the large intestine. What's the purpose of the large intestine? So, part of it is compaction, absolutely. Okay. What are we compacting?
Like whatever's left.
Mhm.
Food after it goes through.
Yeah, and one word we could use for that is just waste. Yeah, it's just waste. It's a byproduct of the food. There's a lot of food that we don't digest. We don't have the enzymes to fully digest them. We talked about doing that with cellulose. That's why we eat the corn and we can't get anything out of it. So it's waste. What else do we have going on? There's also bacteria that can digest some of that waste, and we get vitamins. That's that they produce. Okay. And thank goodness we have control over when we want to get rid of that waste, right? So coming from, to some degree, we have
Some with others.
some more of those, yes, true. Yeah. And we have the end of our system here, the anus. And we could also put that maybe some more than others, but also some days better than others too. Trust me, there are days I think I have control, and there are other days where like you better get out of my way. That's probably too much information, but I know y'all been there, so you understand. Now, sometimes that nervous, like we can actually override that urge when the body needs for something to get out, like with diarrhea, it's going to come out. Okay, because the body is like, come on, we've got to get this out. Maybe because we've gotten food poisoning. We need to get those bad bacteria out of our cells, flush out the system. Okay, and so the nervous system will override our ability to control that. No fun to fight with yourself. The opposite of that would be constipation. And depending on if you get older, if you've got stress, low fiber, so you're not eating that corn. Disease. Did I tell you all the kitty cat story? I don't think I've told y'all this story. So I haven't told y'all the little kitten that I found on the road when I was in high school. I need to ask. Okay, are you sure you're up for this, Shelby? Because you're dealing with a cat situation right now. Feel like she's thinking. Okay, I'll go for it. Stop me if you need me to. So when I was in high school, my sister and I, we were driving to band camp. So, not that many people on the road. It's not actually school yet. And on the way there, we see like so there's a car in front of us and there's another car in front of that one. And that front car hit a kitten on the road. We see it. Second car goes over the kitten, but doesn't hit the kitten. You know how the tires kind of straddle. And my sister and I, we're cat people. We've grown up with cats all of our lives. We stop, we pick it up. Me and my naiveness as a teenager, not realizing that if you pick a kitten up and take it to the vet, you're going to be the one to pay for that. Mm-hmm. So I arrived to come get the kitten later. I thought, altruism. The vet would just fix it, right? No. So I got my $200 from my savings account to pay for this cat. that I was not prepared for, and I did not have a job. So telling how long I've had that $200 in the bank account, but I learned the lesson. So she tells me that we had to do surgery. We removed part of the tail on the kitten. We did surgery, like it has no fur from here down. It's a long haired kitten, beautiful kitten. And so it's a she. He said, we don't know if her digestive system is okay. Okay, basically she got ran over on that end of her. And this large intestine was the problem. He wasn't sure if it would work. And so we had to watch her for a while and see if she was able to poop, basically. Good news, she was able to poop. The large intestine was not so damaged, it healed, it was fine. 2 weeks later, a hawk picked her up and took her off.
Oh,
$200.
I was about to say, $200, what? That's so sad.
You're
It's
making
funny
me
now.
feel lucky. Mine was only 58.
Oh, nice. Mine was 200. That was shock to me. I was not prepared for that as a 18-year-old. Even 18.
Yeah, mine was only 58. She's gonna be fine. I'm glad it was not 200. Jesus Christ, that hurt my heart, and it happened a while ago, but still, oof.
Yeah, trust me. I was actually 17 now that I think about it. That was not a good day. She was a beautiful kitten, though. I will forever remember her. She has become an integral part of my teaching now. So she's not forgotten. She was the cutest cat, though, telling you. Oh well. Think about it now, unfortunately. So this is important. If you can't poop, you get constipated, if you can't get it out, that's going to be a problem. That can require surgery, or it could just require Metamucil, all depending on how bad it is. Okay. Why do we need to get feces out of us? It's because it can actually increase appendicitis and colon polyps. You don't want colon polyps. And to find out if you've got colon polyps, they have to stick something up your butt to look. So if you've ever heard of a colonoscopy, that's how they find it. And also the way, yes, y'all's faces are great. The way they get rid of colon polyps, if they can, because they have to check and see if they become cancerous, and it's possible. They have to, the same way that they do the colonoscopy and look, they have a little way to remove them while they're in there. So not a good thing. You definitely don't want to become cancerous. Yeah, I won't get into more details because there are even times when people's colons don't work and they have to have those colostomy bags. It's not. If you're not sure what that is, I'll let you go look that up. Okay, are y'all okay with on good components of diets? Like eat fiber, there's 2 different kinds. Do good complex carbs, not the simple carbs, processed carbs. Everybody get there? Lipids. Okay. For the most part, lipids are all, I think, okay too. There's a few essential ones that you have to get from your diet, and some of the best ways to get it are through like fish, tree nuts, and like olive oils, for example. Unsaturated fats bad. Sorry, unsaturated fats good. Saturated fats bad. Trans fats even worse. Okay, y'all need to go over what those mean, the difference. Usually unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature, so you're dealing with oils, like olive oil, for example. Okay, and their molecular structure has double bonds. That's why it's considered to be unsaturated. It's not saturated with hydrogens. Do you remember me drawing a picture of that? Saturated fats, on the other hand, are saturated with hydrogens. And these are going to be your more solid style things like butter, fats in your meats. Okay, and they increase a lot of your risk of heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Yet they taste so good. It's so sad. I still keep my bacon grease. Trans fats, on the other hand, are things that started out life as an unsaturated fat, and then we produce them into a saturated fat, made them trans fats. Okay, so they are chemically altered. And remember, just because I say something is a chemical thing doesn't mean it's a bad thing, right? Because everything is chemicals. But in this case, this is a situation where we actually caused double bonds to be saturated with hydrogen. Okay, I need to hurry up. You've got 30 more minutes. Okay, proteins. I feel like y'all were okay with this. I do want to bring up again that we have 8 essential amino acids. And if you're a vegetarian or vegan, actually, usually if you're a vegan, that's the one that's more complex here. If you eat just plants, then you have to do certain plants in combination. For example, a legume and a true grain. So peanut butter and wheat bread would do it. But so would hummus and pita. Hummus is made from chickpeas. It could be beans and rice, or cornbread and beans. Those are some examples. Okay, that would allow you to have all 8 in a day. Okay, otherwise you might be missing some. You could be malnourished. Okay, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals. Basically, eat plants. Eat plants. Okay. I want to jokingly say eat plants or they'll eat you, but that's not really the case. Okay. You're really going to get most of these things from plants better than you can get from animals. We went over some of this stuff in our homeworks, the irritable bowel syndrome, stomach growling, vomiting. More than likely, it's these questions from these links. These are going to be short answer questions. Okay, so I'm going to try to pick the ones that give you, like, I either pick a question that we really did in one of the homeworks, like the vomiting, for example. I felt like that was decently worded article. It's pretty easy to follow. Or I might give you options. Tell me about 1, 2, or 3 of these, you know. But they'll be short answers, okay? You feel okay with that? So, Brittany, you okay with that? I didn't know if you had a question. The pescatarian aspect, this was more ecological. Just where does your fish get mercury to potentially get mercury poisoning? That's the thing you want to remember about that one. The rest, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. Vomiting and burping are kind of the opposite of swallowing. Did anybody watch the burping video? I have it posted. It's like a short one. It shows how the air comes back up. It's in Canvas. Okay. Y'all have any questions about the digestion? Because I need to make sure I cover the other stuff too. Okay. Can I take it this way? Okay. Any questions on digestion? How many of y'all have taken the quiz? I know one of you has. Anybody else take it here? Okay. You may see some of those things that I pointed out on that quiz. The test is on Friday, just a reminder. And if you will, it would be nice, bring your Scantron back, okay? We'll use the blue side. If you don't, I've got some other ones, but it'd be nice if you do. Okay, so we're going to talk about innate immunity, and then we'll talk about adaptive. Okay, innate immunity. Anybody tell me what it is?
you already there, like, predisposed.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it built-in. Your built-in defenses. And I'm gonna say not specific, what I really mean is not very specific. Okay, and the reason I say that not very specific is there are some pathogens that we have no innate resistance to. And there are some pathogens that don't care anything about us. Why do I say that? Because part of your innate immunity is your body temperature. If you are 37 degrees Celsius most of the time, and there are some bacteria that really enjoy growing at 20 degrees Celsius, do they want to infect you? No, you're going to be too hot for them, right? That could mess up their enzymes. It could even kill them. Or vice versa, there are some bacteria that may want to work at 50 degrees Celsius, and you're going to be too cold for them. That's part of your innate resistance. Does that make sense? Okay. Sometimes you don't even have chemical receptors. Okay. This is one of those things about COVID right now that's so interesting, is that we have the receptor, it's ACE2, it's the ACE2 binding site. And so COVID actually attaches to that receptor. But if we didn't have that, okay, in other viruses, if we didn't have their specific ways for them to attach to us, they would not be a pathogen to us. Okay. Why do some animals get certain viruses and not us? Okay, as far as I know, I don't think humans get parvo. Dogs do, but humans don't, as far as I know. Why? Probably because it's something that is specific to the dog cell, not to the human cell. Does that make sense? Okay, so those are some of those inbuilt things that just make us incompatible to certain things. Also, you have certain defenses that are part of this innate immunity. Also, they're not very specific. So we've got first line of defense. And these are things that just basically stop entry into the body. Can y'all name some? So your skin, and so that takes us back to test one, right, with the epithelial tissue. And we also talked about how epithelial tissue is also a part of our like digestive system and some of our other entrances and exits to our body, right? So how do we protect those entrances and exits? If the skin doesn't stop it from going in, we have all these orifices. How do we protect those orifices? Mucus. Okay. Why do you get snotty? You get allergies. It's your body trying to create a barrier to protect those holes. It also means you can't breathe, but you know which one's better. I guess it really depends on what your body's thinking about at the time. That's kind of anthropomorphizing it, but I think y'all kind of get the idea. You okay with that? Okay, so there are different ways that the skin can do this. We have tightly packed cells. We've kind of seen how the tissue in lab, how it's all packed together for the epithelial tissue. Your dead skin cells fall off, and along with those bacteria will fall off. It's big, barrier. And we also have epidermal dendritic cells. And so again, I think as we'll see through all of immunity, phagocytosis is pretty common, right? What does phagocytosis mean again? Eat cells, okay? Other things that the skin has are perspiration. And what does perspiration do? Well, salt is not good for bacterial growth. Why? Because of osmosis, and we can have water drawn out, right? Antimicrobial properties. So there's actually things that we produce. Lysozyme. Sebum is an oil that protects our skin, keep it from cracking and creating holes into it. It's so funny. I think about this. Has anybody ever owned a reptile? So for anybody who's ever owned a reptile or knows somebody who has, sometimes you have to be really careful about their skin drying out because of the scales. They can have cracking. And to some degree, when you look at our skin overlapping, it actually looks a little bit scale-like, doesn't it? Makes me feel a little bit more what a snake might feel. But basically, oil, and you can use different kinds of oils on, I think, on snakes. I'm not real sure about that, but they do have a cracking thing that you can help with their cracking so they don't dry out. Okay. It also helps to lower our skin pH. And the more acidic something is, the less likely it's going to be able to grow there, right? Okay. Now, mucus, basically, you've got the same ideas with the addition of mucus kind of coming and going. It's going to create liquid, and that liquid's going to move sometimes, right? So if you get a big bunch of snot in your nose, where's that snot going to go? Out of your body, sometimes down your throat, but the goal is to get it out of you, right? And along with it, any bacteria or virus or something we picked up, could even be pollen. Okay. We have little hairs inside that help to kind of push along that. There's also dendritic cells involved. There's a lot of chemical defense here. It's really similar to skin, just as a liquid form. That's produced from epithelial tissue. And it's why we get hacking up, fluids or stuff, because we get those mucus forming when we get those infections or invasions. Here's a comparison for y'all to look at with skin and mucus. Am I going to ask you about all this stuff? No. It's just to help you to kind of get a better idea of how they're a little different. There is one thing I think is important, and this is to think about your eyes. This one's a little bit different. You've got what's called the lacrimal apparatus, and tears are a little bit different than I would think of with mucus. Okay. And where did we say tears go? When you cry, where do your tears go? When you get something in your eye or in your nose and it makes your eyes water, where do those tears go? I don't know where tears go. Come on. Down your face. Where else do they go? It's the one you probably don't think about. Out your nose. You know when you're crying and you get all like snotty? That's not really snot. I mean, it's maybe mixed with snot, but some of it's tears. And it's because your sinuses are a connection point with your eyes, nose, and ears. Now, I don't know that you can cry out your ears, but it is possible to get other liquids out your ears. Okay. Anybody snorted milk by accident? You're drinking it, it's gone places in your sinuses that you didn't mean for the milk to go. Nobody ever did that as a kid by accident? I don't know what I'm talking about, do you? No. I don't know why kids do this. It's like they can't control themselves. They're just drinking through a straw, and the next thing you know, they got milk coming out their eyeballs because they sneeze weird. You know what I'm saying? It happens, right? And it's because all those things are connected. What's interesting, and I'm going to point out one word here, eyes. Lysozyme. And I'm going to break this word down. What do you think the zyme tells you? Enzyme. What about lyso or lyso? Yeah, the cells are going to break. Actually, that should be an S, not a Z. Lysozyme. So when cells lyse, boom. Okay. Boom. They explode. Lyso is that cells. Yep. Okay. Now, at any point, have I talked about something that's specific about any certain kind of species of bacteria or an allergy or something else? Nothing specific, right? So that's kind of the idea. It's not specific to a certain thing. It's to try to keep anything that's foreign from your body from getting in. Okay. You also have one other thing, and you have your own microbiota. Okay. So you have your own microbes that are trying to, well, they're not trying to protect you. They're already there. They're already eating the extra nutrients. They've taken up all the space. And because they're there and your body's like, wait a minute, do I really want you there? They actually stimulate your second line of defense too. We haven't got to that point, but they will start to stimulate it. Okay, and they'll also produce some vitamins, which we talked about in the digestive system. So y'all see a connection there. Okay, we good so far? So here's some of our secretions that we produce and how they protect you. And I think we've talked about peeing in the shower. Yeah, some people say that that helps with that, but I don't think that it actually does. I think it's too weak to be acidic enough or with any of the other enzymes. But that's some people's reasoning behind it. Okay, so I'll let y'all go through those. Then we're going to get to the second line of defense. Okay, so once you get past the first line of defense, we're at the second line of defense. So we have gotten through the skin. We've gotten past the mucous membranes. And so at this point, we're going to see defenses that are a little bit different. They're going to be made of cells that our bodies have, antimicrobial chemicals, and different processes, a lot of which are going to be involving the blood. So here we've got white blood cells. I'll try to use the word white blood cell with anything that I ask you. Although sometimes you might also see leukocyte. It's the same thing. Okay, so we've got white blood cells. Okay, and there are two kinds. And from what I wanted you to know about here is that there are types. I don't really care too much that you remember the types. Okay, but there are different types and they fight things in slightly different ways. The neutrophils and eosinophils, some of them do phagocytosis. So we've got the granulocytes, here's the agranulocytes. There are some more types. These are called lymphocytes, which we talk about in adaptive immunity. Natural killer lymphocytes with adaptive immunity, monocytes, which are part of the blood. Some of these are macrophages. So these are big eaters, okay? And of course, phagocytosis. Okay. This picture just was to show you some of them and show you why it's called granulocytes and agranulocytes. I don't care if you know that, so don't worry about it. What's important about the types is that the types tell you stuff. What kinds of stuff can it tell you? What you are, first off, if you're infected, two, what you might be infected with. Okay. So if you have higher leukocytes and neutrophils, you're going to have bacterial diseases more than likely. If it's an eosinophil, you've probably got an allergy or a parasitic worm. Okay, so basically you can actually identify which of these are flowing through your blood, and it will help doctors know which thing that you might need to be looking for that's infecting you, causing the problem. Okay, viral infections are going to see more of the lymphocytes. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier today, I think, Adrian, wasn't it? Okay, now with phagocytosis, what I want you to be able to do here is to kind of not necessarily, do I need you to use the word chemotaxis or adherence or maturation? No. Do you have to hit all 6 steps? No. But can you describe this to someone? And I'll show you a picture. Can you show someone this idea in a non-scientific way without losing some of the science? I don't want you to just say they eat cells. I want you to give me a little bit more. So for example, like they detect or they go after the invader. That's what chemotaxis is. Chemo means chemical and taxis means movement. Basically, they can detect something. Chemotaxis is like, so if you're a foreign invader, you've got these phagocytic cells and okay. After that, they're gonna stick to it. They'll engulf it. Then you'll start to get little spots on the inside of this huge cell that are going to break it down, and they're going to kill it with different enzymes, and then they're going to poop out the pieces. Okay. I don't care how you describe that. And does it have to be all 6 steps? No. I just want you to give me something more than it cells. Okay. Y'all see why I would want you to know more than that? Yeah, it is. Is it eating any cell? Or is it eating specific cells? Specific cells. What kind of cells? The ones that are invading you. And that's that chemotaxis. They are recognizing that this should not be there. And we're going to see how they can do some of that coming up. But that's really important. And they don't just eat it. There's not a mouth, right? Because bacteria don't have mouths. The cells don't have mouths. So they're attaching to it. Why is that important? Can't get away. They take it inside themselves. Why? Because that's where the enzymes are at. They destroy it, they break it down, and they get rid of the waste. Okay, why get rid of the waste? So the body can send that out the bloodstream and you purify it and get rid of it later. Does that help a little bit? So I don't really care too much. I just want to see a little more detail than just the eat cells. Okay, now there are some ways that you can kill with non-phagocytosis. Eosinophils actually attach to the parasite and then they secrete toxins. There's mitochondrial DNA and different proteins that are part of this killing, but basically I just want you to know there are other ways besides phagocytosis. You don't have to be that specific, just that there are some types of white blood cells that don't do phagocytosis but still kill. Okay? Let me write that down. Okay. Natural killer lymphocytes are another way. Again, a lot of toxins here that are secreted. Neutrophils. These are fun because they actually give very specific things based on oxygen and things like that. Superradical O2, hydrogen peroxide is H2O2, hypochlorite, which is basically like bleach. Okay. It's actually the same stuff that we clean our counters with, doesn't it? You ever think about that? Have you ever cleaned your counter with hydrogen peroxide? If you don't have any bleach, use that. It's actually probably better for you in terms of smell because it breaks down to water and oxygen, not to a bad chlorine smell. Also really good at destroying stuff. Okay. Histamines, that one's fun to talk about because it causes inflammation. and then we go take medicine to stop our body from doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, inflammation, we talked about two types, acute and chronic. We've talked a little bit about this with wound healing, so I'm not going to get into great detail here. But acute versus chronic, the difference is that inflammation, which one do you think is okay? Definitely acute. It's because of the period of time. A lot shorter. Chronic is longer. And it can cause damage to your tissues. So here's a picture when we were talking about wound repair and how things can get out of your blood vessels during wound repair when they get inflamed. You can actually see how like the monocytes coming out there on the bottom. So they actually stretch themselves apart and things can slide between cells. Okay, so there's a little bit of wound repair. I'm probably not going to be asking y'all about wound repair on this test, okay, since we've already been testing on that. It's just I'm showing you where it's connected, that's all. Okay, fever. So keep in mind that inflammation brings in a lot of these white blood cells. So they actually come in here. What's fever all about? Oh, I'm so hot, got a fever. It indicates an infection, just like inflammation can shows a wound or a potential infection. So it's an indicator. And why does your body get hot in the when an infection is occurring? What's the problem with increasing temperature for these things? What happens if I were to increase your temperature? I'll stick you in the oven and turn you up to 350. You're going to die. So what is our body trying to do to those invaders? Yeah, it's to fight off invaders, okay, with temperature. So high temperature equals bad on bacterial enzymes. Remember, the reason they're invading you is because you're the right temperature, right? So your body says, okay, for a short period of time, I'm going to not be the right temperature. Let's see what, well, you take that, basically. That make sense? We're making ourselves unwelcome. Y'all need me to give any more examples, or y'all feel pretty good about that one? Our mind totally went to like Princess and the Pea, like making it very unwelcome for her by putting that little thing in there. Okay. This is all controlled by the nervous system. Not too worried about y'all understanding that. Yeah, that's all I want you to get from that. Okay. So that finishes innate immunity. Again, nothing specific. And written it is 448. Okay. Do y'all want me to go into second line of defense? We have about, how many slides? 10 slides that we're going to cover Wednesday. But that's what I went over this morning. So do y'all want me to go through that again now? So yeah, how much time do you want to be here? We've still got time. What's that?
I think it would be better to hear it again on Wednesday.
Okay. Well, we're going to finish the PowerPoint on Wednesday. So the stuff that we covered this morning, I don't know that I'll have time. What I'm going to do after I finish that is, so I think it's like 10 slides of adaptive immunity. We covered a little bit of that in here because the white blood cells, they're going to go into the adaptive part. But when we finish, whatever time we've got left, we're going to talk about COVID and vaccines as kind of the example of how some of those things, that adaptive immunity works. So either when you get infected by something, or you take a vaccine and pretend you got infected by something to increase their immune response. So, real quick, I'll just open it up so y'all can see it. It's got 32 slides. We had like 10 left, so it's like 22 that I went over. And basically, it's just, do you have any idea about B cells and T cells? And well, you know what we'll do? We'll just briefly go over B cells and T cells at the beginning of class next time on Wednesday, so that we recap, and then we'll finish it out. Does that work? Okay. Now, do y'all have any questions? I still got time. I can take more questions. I don't have to go anywhere. Y'all feel full? Your brains look like you're just like.
I'm
No, that's our last. The next thing will be our final exam the following Wednesday.
and our finals comprehensive.
It is.
And you said they use like previous tests and quizzes and the lab quizzes.
Yes. So, and you're gonna see a lot of the same questions again from the three tests, with the quizzes, and I'll probably, well, because we're gonna combine the lab tests together. Would y'all be okay if I made them separate exams that we take at the same time? Like you take one and then take the other? That way I can actually go ahead and have separate grades. It's easier than trying to like separate it later.
Yeah.
So, but for the lab final then, go back to your lab quizzes.
Our lab quizzes.
Yeah, some of them are not quizzes per se.
Yeah, but just everything you're in like our graded section.
Yes, in the graded section. Yep, and a lot of things you're gonna see exactly the way they are. On occasion, if I can find good questions, I may pull a new question you haven't seen. More than likely, I would say 90% of it's gonna be the exact same questions. And the other 10% may be short answer questions that you haven't seen.
Will you give us, like, never just Friday, will we get our test out?
My goal is to hopefully have it done. That's not have it Monday, but I try my best to have it Tuesday. So that y'all have it to take out the time before. I'm gonna try for Monday though.
Because I have a final Monday at 8 a.m. And that's why I was like, I could come by after that and get it, because I won't come to campus and get it until Wednesday. So like, if you have it ready, like, you just send a picture, like through campus or something,
I could probably do that. If I don't have
or
it.
just like, well, we won't have the right answers, or just do something like that. Because,
I will figure out something so that you have the right answers.
like.
I'm gonna
I have to
try.
set it up.
The thing is I have another class that I'm also getting a bunch of stuff for. It's for that, the heritage classes. They're special. They've got to figure out all the salutatorians, all that stuff
Yeah.
on Monday or Tuesday. It's 8 to 11.
Yeah, and then
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? Tuesday day in class. Like I said, yeah.
I have
I don't really have a choice or anything.
It's the class at 1 o'clock. We're on there.
Oh, yeah, I have a final Monday day. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, y'all both have the same ones.
No,
You
no,
have a
no.
version of this class and don't equal it.
I haven't taught this one. I've taught a online BSB 109. Have you taken 109?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first time I've taught 110, and we're officially changing it next fall. So we're instead of being intro to AMP, it'll be intro to biology 2. They're changing the number. I don't know. You might have asked and see if you could take it. I don't know if they'll let you, because we're gonna basically get rid of the 110 designation and just move from here on out to 111. But they're gonna have some other. So I just don't know if they'll let you.
Well, I graduated. But I was was just wondering, because like whenever I was registering for classes, it was like my 3 options between the science courses I had to pick were environmental science, A&D, and chemistry. So environmental science was full, and I had to do an A&D over chemistry, A&D all day. And it was like there were two classes that I could sign up for, and one of them was full, and then this one only had like 4 people in it.
Oh, like it's true A and B. Like,
Yeah.
really.
And it was like had 30 people in it.
Yeah, and that's nursing majors, A and B. You don't want to be in that. Trust me, I've taught it before. You know, I don't even like teaching it. It's not my forte. In that case, it's a lot of information. Like you're going to know all kinds of bones and pieces of bones and shapes on bones, cranial, all kinds of different stuff. So there's a lot of information that comes to that. I think this one works out better for a non-major. And it's officially, like I said, it will become a non-AD anymore. So the reason why it's so small is I think it's because it says intro to A and B. Well, I know I don't want that, I'll take something else. It took like environmental science. And we already knew that we wanted to change it, but it's been on the books officially this way. But we've got community colleges that are wanting like a intro to bio 2, kind of like a non-major bio 2. And so that's why we're making the change. This was supposed to be for nursing majors who weren't quite ready for real AAD. And as y'all can see, we are there. Hence the reason why I went on and just we modeled the class into something that was more interesting than straight up AAD. I tell you, I have so many things I want to talk about. I had some great questions. So I think we're literally covering 2 of our 12 sections. I couldn't. But one of the assignments that's left is I want y'all to speak that. So this is different than the evaluation. I want to know how you think I should teach this class if it's all online. Yeah, that's one of the assignments I put up. So it's a 30-point assignment. You can't get it wrong. I just really would like to know your feedback on how, because I think it's worked really well in person with the ability to do it hybrid through Zoom. But I don't have a choice in this too much, but they want it online in the fall. So I'm trying to think what topics would be best to cover. And so, one thing you can tell me is like, I don't want to cover tissues, I want to cover this or that. Like, what would be more interesting? Would you feel better in taking it if it was less A&P based? I was kind of keeping it to the A&P because that's the class that I signed up for. But I won't have to do that, but I can keep the A&P base. That's kind of up to y'all what you think is good. So that's one of the assignments that's up. I'll take any feedback. If it was me, I'd be like, just come take major files and all kinds of fun stuff. But being in biology, I'm a little bit biased there. I'm interested to know what non-majors might want in that kind of course. And also format makes a difference. Like Shelby and I talked a little bit, I don't know if she can still hear us, but we were talking that I should do some Zooms where people could, like, it's almost like I was teaching in person. So because we won't have that effect for an online class, we can say, hey, I'm going to designate this one time a week. We're going to have a Zoom. You can make it. If you don't, I'll record it. That's one option. Y'all like the recordings being posted? Do y'all actually use the recordings? I'd love to know that.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that, like, honestly, for college students, COVID was one of the best things to ever happen because it started forcing us to use Zoom, and then Zoom implemented the recording feature, which meant it was very class while you're there and taking notes. Like, you're gonna be so focused on writing, like you can't be fully focused on, or at least I can't be fully focused on listening and writing at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's like being able to go back and listen to what we talked about like 2 or 3 times really helps me understand it a little bit better, especially being a non-major. Like, a lot of these words I would never have thought, even existed, so it takes a little bit longer for me to kind of grasp it because it's just something so different from what I do. But
Yeah, and it's hard for me sometimes because I am so used to the terminology, I'll spit out stuff and not think about it being ready. My bio majors go through this with me when I teach Bible. And they're like, what on earth have we gotten ourselves into? It's a whole new world, whole new language, and it's still within biology, it's in their major. And for them, it's completely, so even they go through those kind of things as well. But I know what you're saying. I have been doing my bio 1 and 2 for major class with videos for years already. When I first started teaching it online in summers, I recorded all of my lectures. And I don't really change my lectures a lot. I need to do some updating, but I thought, well, if I have them, somebody misses. I just put every lecture up. And you don't come, here you go. You don't need to come and listen to me, you can pass it. Don't take the tests, it's fine too, I don't care. Because not everybody learns the same way. So that's good feedback, I'm glad that y'all are using those videos, because I'm not so sure how people remember.
Whenever you set it up on the notes, like you said, like a lot of the words, like all you be going on spell them and stuff, but when you set it up like that,
Yeah,
it's easier to understand. Like, I can go down.
yeah, we
I
probably.
want to know how to do the notes. Like,
So what's interesting about what I'm doing here is when you're in a class, this is what you want to do. You want to take what you're taught and outline it
yeah,
or summarize it. And that's all I'm doing here is kind of doing that with you. When people ask me for study guides, truthfully, what I did right here was what any student could do for themselves. As long as they understood the material, they could make their own study guide. But in this case, I'm showing y'all some more complex things than would be easy for y'all to just pick up real fast. So I'm kind of doing it with you. But yeah, if you can do, I love outlining. Hated it in high school. I love it now because I don't care if it follows the rules. Well, you see what I do, because my outlines are also not like just words. I'm also have pictures. I love flow charts, and I can say, look, this is connected here. And y'all saw what I did before. It helps to make it visual. And I can't draw worth a flip, but I can still make it visual so that my visual brain keeps it. And when you draw it yourself, it sticks with you a lot better. So that's one thing. Yeah. Yeah, if you can ever take your own information and put it in some other form, outline, flow chart. I usually avoid like flashcards. I think there's too disjointed personally. Or drawings, then it'll stick better. The more ways that you can encounter information, the better it will appear. And what we did today was, I was trying to avoid just teaching y'all the same thing over again, just kind of summarize it some. But we did it a little bit differently than we did it before. So if you're here and the first time, you hear it this time, you go back and watch the videos, and you do like multiple times there. That's at least 3 different ways that you encounter the information. And that's a learning process. It's part of taking in new things. It doesn't come in like that. Not very often. So, do y'all have any more feedback or questions? Anything I can help you with? Like I said, we'll do it adaptive immunity on. We'll finish adaptive immunity on Wednesday. Do y'all like short answer, multiple choice? That's something else I wanted to ask y'all.
I think it's harder to question. Like if it's a, you know, if it's like a what have you learned question or.
Yeah.
I don't really see how you can explain the photosynthesis process in a multiple choice question.
Let's take pieces of it, small pieces on.
I think you have a pretty good balance on sense of quizzes and stuff, multiple choice to short answer questions. Because it's not an overwhelming amount that we have to write. Like, you know, I've not finished questions and lost points because I was still writing. And if I can go through that test in a 50-minute period.
So that's what test three will look like on Friday. I'll try to keep a similar balance. The final, of course, will be longer because it's we'll have 3 hours, but I can't make the company's final that long. I don't really want to either. We usually make it about 1.5 times the size. So if we've got 30 multiple choice questions and 4 or 5, we might have like 45 multiple choice questions and 5 or 6 short answers. Then of course we'll also have the lab final, so that'll be later on top of that. So y'all are gonna be tired of it. But hopefully they will help you to follow us.
Is that not going to be a new person thing or something like that?
We're gonna do both of them at the same time on Wednesday. What we were discussing in class. So it's notarized normally I would give the lab final. You usually give lab finals the last week of class or class. But because we wanted to have time to have this, what we just did, everybody else decided that we should do it the same way. So they that'd be okay. Do the same kind of setup. Probably a similar amount of multiple choice and short answers. And if y'all think of more questions on Wednesday, about the fact coming up next week, just let me know and talk about it. That's all I have. So longer for me, but otherwise I think we're okay. Shelby, I'm gonna shut things down, okay?
Wait, do you want to see my cat?
Yeah, please. Oh, how old is she?
She is 9 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's so cute.
Yeah, she weighs 0.19 pounds. I'm sorry I didn't make it, but vet visit went worse than it was supposed to. So,
I'm not
but-
at all surprised. I've been there, done that.
so yeah, but she's a trooper. She's gonna be just fine. But
Oh.
I was listening, very much so. But so no
Okay.
worries.
Okay, I will see you Wednesday, hopefully. If not,
I
I'll
will be
see
there
you-
Wednesday. Pinky promise.
Okay,
All right, later, dude.
bye.